Now, it's been described as a compelling narrative of the Buhari administration's media moments, offering an insider's perspective on the policies, programs, and values that defined the former president's tenure. It's a new book titled Headlines and Sound Bites, Media Moments That Defined an Administration, and it's written by Nigeria's former Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, who, by the way, is the longest-serving information minister in the history of Nigeria. In the book, he offers an insider's perspective during a pivotal period in the country's history, 2015 to 2023, shedding light on major national policies, media flashpoints, and the intricacies of government communication. With a personal tribute to the late President Muhammad Buhari, the book has been described as a heartfelt reflection on leadership, loyalty, and public service, making it a good resource for those seeking to understand Nigeria's complex democracy. Well, from all this, I'm suitably delighted to say that I'm joined now in the studio by the author, lawyer, and public relations expert, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, who served as Nigeria's Minister of Information and Culture from 2015 to 2023. How nice to see you again.
Just thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for coming in. And congratulations, because it is not easy. I mean, even though you're obviously a media expert and the rest of it, it's not easy writing a book, and especially one as big as that.
Just thank you for very kind words, and thank you for having me here. Actually, this book, Headlines, Soundbites, and Soundbites, media moments that define an administration, is actually my own personal effort to write a piece of Nigerian history from a vantage point of the longest-serving Minister of Information and Culture. For 8 years, I was privileged to be at the center of policy making, government communication, at the center of tourism, at the center of national orientation and culture. And therefore, I found it a duty and an obligation to let Nigeria knows, let the world knows what actually goes on, what transpires, what happens, what are those facts behind the headlines and the soundbites.
Indeed.
And that's exactly what this book is all about.
And how much does it capture the essence of that Buhari administration's media moments? I mean, I suppose it's for the people to make their judgment as to how much it does, but from your perspective.
From my perspective, I think it tries to really cover the 8 years from the perspective of an insider, from somebody who was there from the beginning to the end. And that is why in that book you read about toughest moments in my career as a minister.
And what were the toughest moments?
Moments when I felt like resigning, when I've actually told, asked by my family to resign. I was going to find in that book difficult decisions that one had to make. You'll find in that book also how the iconic National Theatre was rescued from this use. You also find in that book how we helped to prevent P&ID from defrauding Nigeria of $9.6 billion.
That was a big moment, wasn't it?
Because to many people, it was probably a matter of law, but we believe that it was a matter of public opinion and court of law. So you find this in the book also. You also find in the book how we used the media to push back narratives, especially when naysayers claimed that the military had actually not recovered, territories such as Kaure, Kondoga, Bama. You also find in the book, how we were able to, engage and whenever they bring back our girls to accompany us to Yola, from where we made, sorties in enough, aircraft over Sambisa to see firsthand exactly what the military were doing to bring back, the rescue, to rescue these girls. So from the beginning to the end, you are going to find moments that define the Buhari administration.
I mean, it sounds pretty compelling, to be honest. But you talked about the difficult moments, and obviously you're the one who's in charge of managing information on behalf of the government in a country where there's considerable skepticism about the actions of government. Over things, for example, like the Twitter ban, which I believe is contained in your book, for which many Nigerians, you'd have to admit, never really forgave you or the Buhari government. And of course, the CNN controversy over the NSAS Lekki Toll Gate incident.
Charles, exactly. This is what is in that book. For instance, I know when I say one of the most difficult decisions I took, that was suspending Twitter's operation in Nigeria. I had to take the decision on national interest. Because a time came when Twitter became the platform of choice for all those who are destabilizing the country. So there's some decisions like that you have to take, not because you like them. As a matter of fact, you won't be popular if you are a minister of information.
But I mean, the ostensible reason, the trigger for that was President Buhari's tweet, which was then deleted.
Honestly, that was not. And you find it in this book. I went to President Buhari and I asked him that, sir, we need to suspend service of Twitter. And he asked why. He said, is it because they deleted my tweet? I said, no, sir. And I gave him instances and examples.
Yeah, but what I mean is that was the trigger, because you hadn't, were you planning to suspend Twitter at that point?
I'd been an advocate of regulating the social media for a very long time, if you remember.
Yes, I do recall that.
I started by advocacy. I started by visiting media houses. I started by trying to work with them. But it was clear in my mind that an unregulated social media could be a disaster. So actually, that was not the trigger. If you monitored me between 2016 and 2023, I was always on the issue of social media. And I kept saying, I'm not trying to stifle free press, but we must regulate the social media. There, you mentioned the issue of CNN, and honestly, that pushback, I still stand by it. Nobody ever said nobody died during the NSAS. No, people died even in Abuja. They died in Lagos. They died in Kano. But what we were saying is that CNN was not at the toll gate. CNN relied on second-hand, third-hand information as if we were there. And my argument and logic was very simple. If a man has a goat and the goat does not come home one night, he will go out and look for that goat. Now, 5 years on today, nobody has come to tell us that my son or my ward went to the toll gate, didn't come back. We never said there was no. People died in Adimosho. People died, many places during the NSAS. As a matter of fact, 37 policemen were killed. 6 soldiers were killed. It's what we kept making that, listen, NSAS was unfortunate, it was tragic, but that there was a massacre at the toll gate is fake news.
Well, the jury is out on that one.
Absolutely.
So let's move on from there. You are, of course, listening to you now buttresses that point, a seasoned communicator. How difficult, because again, I'm not meaning to sort of harp on about it, but you talked about difficult moments. How did you balance crisis management, such as what you were talking about, and public enlightenment during your tenure? Because, crisis management was required at times of sort of the NSAS protest, because I mean, that was a huge, it was a huge moment in this country's history, and it portrayed the administration in a very, very bad light, didn't it, internationally?
You see, one of the jobs of a communicator, one of the biggest challenges of a communicator is how do you prevent fake news and misinformation from overshadowing the real facts.
But I would also imagine, how do you prevent government overbearingness over what potentially is news that is important for the public in the country?
You see, for a government, the national interest, it's the overriding interest. And no government, no person will set out to have a bad government or set out to stifle the freedom of people. And for 8 years, I was on the beat. And for 8 years, I tried to communicate government to the people, get a feedback from them, and also take that feedback to government. And we did it in many forms. We organized town hall meetings, which you're going to find in this book. Town hall meetings were unique because this was a platform where policymakers spoke to the government and the government spoke back to them. I, as a minister, I used to meet every fortnight with bureau chiefs so I could carry them along. As minister, we were meeting every month. Myself, Karupe Shehu, Femi Adesina, we were meeting with the Minister of Defense, the Minister of Police Affairs, Chief of Army Staff, and we were inviting title editors. And we were discussing issues that were not meant for publication, so we could build confidence. And they saw what many people did not see. See, I have had the unique opportunity for having been a spokesperson for the opposition for 10 years. I'm back-to-back Minister of Information for 8 years. And I know the difference. So that's what was easy for me to handle the portfolio of government information, because I've been out there, being the other side where the media is.
And you were driven largely by, as you said, the national interest?
I was largely driven by national interest. I was driven by passion.
Was it national interest or self-preservation of an administration? Because there's a very thin line between the two, where the impression is always given that it's national interest.
Honestly, Charles, when you are out there, you hardly ever think about self-preservation. Small fact,
I would have thought that would be preeminent.
No, as a matter of fact, towards the last 2 years of my office minister, I couldn't wait for it to last. I couldn't wait for it to end. No, and when you talk about self-preservation, against who? The minister, you will always know that there's an end to a tenure. And when you leave, people will see where the dead bodies are buried. So
when I mean self-preservation, I don't mean you in particular. I mean generally about the government that you served, because you talked about the people, the rabble-rousers and so on, who were on Twitter and that kind of thing. I mean, their target was your government. Their target was not Nigeria.
You see, Charles, the Twitter people were rabble-rousers. Those were not the only challenges we had. We had real-life challenges. We had Boko Haram. We had banditry. We had herdsmen farmers clashes. We had IPOP. I mean, those are real challenges we had. Of course, these platforms, the Twitter and became the platform of choice for all of them. So, and in a government, in a democracy where you know that you are going to spend 4 years, if you do well, you'll be elected. If you don't do well, you'll be voted out. Your concentration will be, how do we leave a legacy? How do we make a difference in the lives of people? Honestly, I don't think, and I'm speaking for many of my friends, we never saw, preserving the administration as a priority. No. We saw preserving Nigeria as a priority because there's a country called Nigeria. So that's why there are ministers, that's why there are journalists, that's why there are, businessmen. And that was, to us, that was most important.
And what lessons do you think current and future leaders can draw from your experience in managing Nigeria's narrative? And is that also contained in the book?
Yes. One of the things that somebody asked me, what is the central theme of that book? One is that central message number one is that Nigerian contemporary history would not be fully understood unless those who have been inside are allowed and encouraged to tell their own stories. Two, this kind of book is actually for posterity. It's to educate the public, and it's also to inspire future leaders. Because it's not just about successes. There are also failures inside this book.
What are the failures? Mention one.
Of the failures. What? If I might not even call it a failure, just a challenge, for instance. Like in this book, during the NSAS, one of the toughest moments, in my life, when my family met, they had a meeting, and they asked me to resign. It's a very tough moment.
Why did they ask you to resign?
Because they were bullied online, they were bullied offline, their businesses
They'd had enough, basically.
They had enough.
Right.
They said, look, wait a minute, we are not benefiting from this thing. So why are you exposing us? And I had to sit them down and tell them it's not as easy as that. There are things I know, there are things that I see that you cannot see.
And of course, in the book, you paid special tributes to your late boss, President Buhari. How would you say your relationship with him shaped your approach to the job?
Well, you see, in the chapter I dedicate to him, I said mentor, friend, and boss. This was all three to me.
Did he communicate with you? I mean, you are a communicator.
He did communicate a lot. So, in fact, there are a few anecdotes in this book. I will tell you one, for instance. In the run-up to the merger in 2015, in 2013, we used to go to Kaduna often, led by Ashwaju, Babisi Akande. I used to accompany them. And most times when President Buhari invited me for lunch, if it fell on a Thursday or on a Monday, I would decline, but did not know that I used to normally fast on Mondays and Thursdays. So one day he asked Ashwaju, he said, look, doesn't like me? Does he dislike me? Why does he not eat in my house? So I explained to me, I said, look, Lai fast on Mondays and Thursdays. And then after a while, he called me to his office. He said, Lai, tell me the truth. How many people have you killed? I said, no. He said, why are you atoning every day by fasting? Is that the sort of why people never knew?
But that was before he became president.
Oh, yes, that was quite. But even when he became president, it didn't change much. Even when he became president, I remember I went to him one day, and that was a time when some of my colleagues as ministers, wanted to run for presidency. Some wanted to be governors, some wanted to be senators. So as he was leaving the council chambers, he said, just offhandedly, he said, well, I've seen many of you people, I've seen your posters. If anybody wants to be a president or anybody wants to be a governor, you should please resign. And I said, this is big news. I hope I'm hearing well. So I followed him up so that he can, really make clarity. His Excellency, I'm going to have a press conference now. Are you really saying that those people, anybody that wants to be minister, want to be president, should resign? He said, yes. Lai, they want to call me. I let them go and campaign also now. And that is him. But he was a very loyal person, extremely loyal.
But in terms of legacy, because I mean Nigerians are kind of mixed when it comes to his time in office. How do you think his leadership will be remembered in Nigerian history?
I think posterity will be kind to him. Because you see, when I came in 2015, certain parts of this country, Northeast in particular, like Borno State, like Yobe, like Bauchi, were not even accessible. When I went to Kaure, Bama, and Konduga, and Maiduguri on the 5th of December 2015, which is in this book, there was no life there. I traveled from Maiduguri to Bama, and about 70 kilometers, there was no one single vehicular traffic on the road. When I landed in Bama, I thought I was in Afghanistan. The entire town was in Arabic. All road signs were in Arabic. That was the effectiveness of Boko Haram then. They actually had their caliphate, their headquarters there, where they actually imposed and deposed emirs and the ran government. Of the 20 local governments in Borno State then, only 7 were, with federal government. 13 were under the complete control of Boko Haram. So when you look at that and what he left, you would begin to appreciate that, yes.
But I mean, his own state, Katsina state, I mean, the more local governments were taken over while he was in office.
You see, I remember I had a town hall meeting in Katsina on banditry. I still remember the first thing that the governor Masari told us was that the earliest recorded history of banditry in Katsina was in 1891. Now, so for people to understand banditry, they need the historical context. The issue of inclusion in governance, the issue of effectiveness of governance. Now, the bandits, you see, and this is what is very important for me, be it banditry, be it Boko Haram, it has absolutely nothing to do with ethnicity or religion. When I was presenting a paper to the Council of Foreign Relations in Washington, I made this clear. I said Kebbi is the headquarters of banditry and Katsina. The bandits are Hausa Fulanis and they are Muslims. Their victims are Hausa Fulanis and they are Muslims. Therefore, you can't read religious motive into it.
Yeah, but I think the point I was making was that you were talking about how President Buhari had managed to recover a lot of territory back from
from Boko Haram.
But then he'd lost a lot of territory as well.
Absolutely. You see, that's why I told that the issue of banditry is quite different from Boko Haram.
Right.
You see, Boko Haram is religious, is religiously inspired. Banditry is about resources.
It's materially inspired.
Exactly. It's about resources. It's about material, about resources, yes. And of course, even when we put up that argument about, desert encroachment, climate change, they all work to help not just banditry, even farmers' elders clashes. But the important thing is that a government has a responsibility and you would do your best to ensure that you secure the lives and properties of the citizens. And this he did to his own ability also, to his best of his ability.
Well, let me just say that for those who are keen to know more about the government side. It's all contained in that book there. We're almost out of time, but when is it? It's going to be launched next week.
Yes, December 17th, and a week today.
Right.
And actually, we purposely chose the date because it's the posthumous birthday of Muhammad Buhari. If he were alive, he would have made it 83.
Right.
And
I mean, what was it, as we come to the end of the conversation, what was it that struck you the most about the media moments that you chronicled in that book?
Well, I think what struck me most is, one, the fact that when you are made a minister, there's no textbook, there's no guide. You just need to be very inventive. You have to be very resourceful. You have to be very bold.
A bit like journalism. The news changes every day, so you've just got to get on top of it.
You must be ahead of the news. You must be ahead of journalists. And I give you 2 examples. For instance, when the girls, when about 200 girls were kidnapped in Dapchi, I didn't wait for journalists. I went there myself.
I was there myself. I went to Dapchi.
I got there before everybody, as you remember. I went there because I wanted to take possession of the narrative.
Indeed.
And when I saw that this issue of bringing back our girls was getting toxic, I engaged them. Because I was also always engaging the military. I said, look, the military, they are not resting. Every night they make sorties over Sambisa Forest. So I persuaded them, and they agreed, and we worked together to Yola, from Yola to Sambisa for 2 nights. We were flying, Air Force, sorties. So that by the time they came back from that trip, they were convinced that the federal government was indeed, especially they issued a statement and saying that the Air Force component of the Nigerian military was doing its best to find these girls. So you have to engage.
Indeed.
And you have to reach out.
Before we go, I have to say something pun intended, but because your name was Lai, I'm sure you came across that a lot.
Yes.
Because your name was Lai.
Yes.
Everybody thought they used it quite a bit, didn't they, on social media to say, well, Lai Mohammed has lied to us about this, and Lai Mohammed.
You see, this comes with territory.
Yeah.
I never took it personally, because one day, I think it must have been 4 or 5, one of my grandkids, one of the minister, I was taking him in my car, and he said, "Grandpa, tell me the truth. Why do they call you Liar Mohammed?"
I like that.
What do you tell a 5-year-old child?
Indeed. So, on that note, I want to thank you very much indeed, and to congratulate you once again on the book Headlines and Sound Bites. Alhaji Lai Mohammed is the author, lawyer, public relations expert, and he served as Nigeria's Minister of Information and Culture from 2015 to 2023. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Charles, thank you very much.
And please come back.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.